What if the greatest civilization in human history wasn't a historical fact, but a spiritual mirror held up to every culture on Earth? We talk about Atlantis as if it's a lost city of gold, a treasure map waiting for a submarine to find it. But what if the truth of Atlantis doesn't lie at the bottom of the ocean, but in the depths of our own collective consciousness? Before we set sail, I want to offer a quick disclaimer. Here at Wisdom Files, we approach history and religion with an open but critical mind. This video isn't intended to present Atlantis as a confirmed archaeological location. There is no definitive proof it ever existed as a physical place. Instead, we are looking at this through the lens of history, comparative religion, and the fascinating evolution of human belief. Whether you believe in the physical city or see it as a powerful allegory, the impact of the story is an undeniable historical fact that has shaped our spiritual landscape for millennia. Welcome to Wisdom Files. I'm glad you're here. If you're fascinated by the intersection of faith, history, and the mysteries of the ancient world, go ahead and hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. We dig deep into these topics every week, and your support helps us keep the channel growing. Now, let's get into the deep waters of history. Plato's religious framework. We have to start with the source. Around 360 BCE, the Greek philosopher Plato wrote two dialogues, the Timaeus and the Critias. Now, most people read these as a piece of what-if history, but in the context of Greek philosophy, Plato was doing something much more sophisticated. He was using his story to illustrate moral decay and divine judgment. According to Plato, Atlantis was a naval power located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we identify today as the Strait of Gibraltar. The island was described as massive, larger than Libya and Asia combined. But here is the theological core. Plato tells us that the island was under the direct patronage of Poseidon, the god of the sea. Poseidon didn't just rule the island, he was its architect. He fell in love with a mortal woman named Cleito, and to protect her, he carved the mountain where she lived into concentric rings of land and water, a structure that perfectly mimics the ancient spiritual symbol of the mandala or the sacred circle, representing wholeness and divine order. Their children became the first rulers of Atlantis, creating a divine lineage. Why does this matter? Because in the ancient world, the concept of divine kingship was the bedrock of civilization. From the pharaohs of Egypt, who were seen as incarnations of Horus, to the emperors of Japan tracing their roots to Amaterasu, to the rulers of Mesopotamia, it was believed that kings were the bridge between the heavens and the earth. By making the rulers of Atlantis the direct descendants of Poseidon, Plato was tapping into a universal religious archetype. He was describing a society that was perfectly aligned with the gods, at least, in the beginning. The mechanics of moral corruption. Plato's Atlantis starts as a utopia, but it ends in destruction. Why? Because of hubris. In ancient Greek theology, hubris isn't just pride, it is an unforgivable overstepping of one's bounds against the divine order. As the generations passed, the divine blood of the Atlantean kings became diluted by their mortal nature. They stopped acting like gods and started acting like tyrants. They became greedy. They engaged in war and conquest. This is a classic religious trope. It's the fall of man narrative that we see in almost every tradition. Whether it's the Garden of Eden in the Bible or the Iron Age in Hindu cosmology, there is a pervasive human belief that we started in a state of grace and wisdom, and we fell into a state of ignorance and sin. Plato describes the Atlanteans gathering in the temple of Poseidon to make laws, mixing their blood with wine in sacred rituals. These rituals weren't random, they mirrored the bull leaping and bull sacrificing rituals of the Minoan civilization on Crete. When Plato wrote this, he was weaving in religious practices that his audience would have recognized as ancient and sacred. He was grounding his myth in the reality of Mediterranean religious experience. The flood, the universal reset button. Now, let's talk about the catastrophe. Atlantis is swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. If you've spent any time studying comparative religion, you know that the Great Flood is the most universal story in human history. You have Noah's Ark in the Hebrew Bible. You have Utnapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh. You have Manu in the Hindu Puranas. You have Deucalion in Greek mythology. Why do all these disparate, isolated cultures talk about a massive, world-ending flood? In the religious imagination, water is the ultimate purifier. It is the primordial element of chaos that existed before creation. When a civilization becomes too wicked, too corrupt, or forgets its divine duties, the waters return to wipe the slate clean. Atlantis isn't just a disaster story, it is a theological statement. It is a warning to every civilization that thinks it is too big to fail. Some scholars, such as Graham Hancock and others, have argued that these myths might stem from the actual, physical rise in sea levels after the last ice age, a time when thousands of coastal settlements were indeed drowned. Imagine being an ancient person, watching the coastline recede year after year, or hearing oral histories from ancestors about a time when the sea was miles further out. That is a terrifying experience. It's no wonder ancient theologians interpreted that shift as a divine act of judgment. The flood is how the universe corrects itself. The Egyptian connection, keepers of wisdom. I want to pivot to something specifically fascinating, the Egyptian connection. Plato claimed he didn't invent this story. He said it came from Solon, one of the 7 sages of Athens, who heard it from the priests at the Temple of Sais in Egypt. Why Egypt? Because in the ancient world, Egypt was the wisdom center. Even to the Greeks, Egypt was the land of ancient secrets, the place where the gods walked closer to the earth. The Egyptian priests told Solon that the Greeks were like children, forgetting their own history, while Egypt remembered. The Egyptian concept of Ma'at is key here. Ma'at is truth, balance, order, and cosmic justice. The universe is supposed to function in a specific, righteous way. If you violate Ma'at, you create chaos. If the Atlanteans became corrupt, they violated Ma'at. When we look at the Atlantis story through this lens, we aren't looking at a history book, we are looking at a moral treatise. The Egyptian priests weren't teaching Solon geography, they were teaching him theology. They were showing him that empires rise based on their adherence to divine law and fall when they embrace greed. It's a lesson that feels eerily relevant today, doesn't it? Esoteric traditions and the lost knowledge. This is where the story of Atlantis really starts to influence later religious and mystical movements. As we move into the Hellenistic period and then the Roman era, mystery religions began to flourish. These were groups that didn't just want public worship, they wanted secret, divine knowledge. Atlantis became a convenient hook for these groups. The idea was that there was once a golden age where humanity possessed advanced spiritual knowledge, perhaps knowledge of how to manipulate the elements, how to communicate with gods, or how to harness the energy of the earth itself. When Atlantis fell, that knowledge wasn't completely lost. Instead, it was carried away by the survivors, the sons of the Law of One, who migrated to Egypt, to the Americas, to India, and planted the seeds of every great civilization that followed. This is the bedrock of what we call the esoteric tradition. It's found in Neoplatonism, Gnosticism, and later in alchemy and Renaissance Hermeticism. These traditions suggest that we are living in the ruins of a greater spiritual reality. We are the inheritors of lost wisdom. If you look at the Gnostic traditions, for example, They teach that humanity is trapped in a material world that is a corrupted version of the divine realm. Atlantis, in this context, becomes a symbol of that original realm, a place that was more real and more divine than the world we inhabit now. It's a religious metaphor for our sense of alienation from God or the source. It's also impossible to talk about Atlantis without nodding to the apocryphal religious texts, specifically the Book of Enoch. In the Enochian narrative, the Watchers, angels who descended to earth, mated with human women, and their offspring, the Nephilim, were giants who corrupted the world. They taught humanity forbidden sciences, metallurgy, warfare, cosmetics, and sorcery. Does this sound familiar? In Plato's account, the Atlanteans were known for their mastery of metals, their grand architecture, and their overwhelming military might, which eventually led to their corruption. The parallel is striking. Both stories describe a technological or spiritual advancement that happened too quickly, was used for selfish purposes, and ultimately drew the wrath of the divine. Early Christian theologians and Jewish mystics recognized these patterns. They saw the myth of Atlantis and the myth of the Watchers as different ways of describing the same spiritual problem, the misuse of power. Whether you call it Atlantis or the corruption of the Nephilim, the religious takeaway is the same: without spiritual restraint, human advancement leads to destruction. Fast forward to the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The story of Atlantis went from a philosophical dialogue to the centerpiece of modern alternative spirituality. Figures like Helena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy, claimed that Atlantis was the home of the fourth root race of humanity. She claimed the Atlanteans were spiritually sensitive but eventually fell into black magic and misuse of psychic energies, causing their destruction. Then you have Edgar Cayce, the famous American mystic. Cayce claimed that in his past lives, he was an Atlantean. He spoke of crystal technology and a society that had learned to harness the power of the sun. Now, from an academic historical standpoint, there is no evidence for crystal-powered cities. But from a religious standpoint, these claims are incredibly significant. They show that in the modern world, the myth of Atlantis functions as a creation myth for those who feel disconnected from traditional dogma. People are looking for a story that explains why we have such a high capacity for technology but such a low capacity for spiritual peace. Atlantis gives them that story. It's a religious explanation for the human condition, a way to say, we have been here before, we have made these mistakes before, and we are capable of something greater. So, let's wrap this up. Why are we still talking about this? Why does Wisdom Files care about a sunken city? Because the story of Atlantis is a religious parable about the soul. At its heart, the story asks the most fundamental questions of any religion: who are we? How did we get here? And why does it feel like something is missing? We feel like we have lost something precious. We look at the complexity of the world and feel a sense of loss, a sense that we are exiles from a better world. Atlantis acts as the lost paradise. It's not just a city, it's a state of being. When we read about it, when we debate it, we are actually performing a religious act. We are looking for our origins. Whether or not the ocean ever swallowed a continent, the story itself has never been lost. It has been carried through history by poets, priests, philosophers, and mystics. It reminds us that our material achievements, our grand cities, our wealth, our power, are fleeting. They are made of sand and will eventually return to the sea. The only thing that endures is the wisdom we cultivate, the moral path we choose, and our relationship to the divine. The lost city is within you. It's the potential for wisdom that we often drown under the weight of our own pride and greed. Maybe the reason we can't find Atlantis is because we're looking for a place, when we should be looking for a state of mind. Thank you for diving deep with me today. It's a heavy topic, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Atlantis is a historical location waiting to be discovered, or is it purely a spiritual allegory meant to teach us about hubris and the divine? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. If this video helped you see the connection between ancient myth and our modern search for meaning, please hit that like button and share it with someone who loves a good mystery. And don't forget to subscribe to Wisdom Files for more explorations into the history, religion, and the strange phenomena that shape our world. Keep questioning, keep seeking, and remember, the truth is often deeper than we think. Until next time.